Your memories travel with you wherever you go. They wait for you wherever you've been. But sometimes your past can come crashing into your present where you least expect it to.
I was on a deployment in Iraq, northeast Iraq. Every once in a while I'd be assigned to work guard duty, and we had kids who would approach us every morning, and they would ask for candy, they would ask for food, they would ask for sodas, and they'd kind of just like hang out around us. I think Brahim was actually one of the more shy kids in the group. He was the same age as my real brother at the time, so we just gravitated towards each other, I guess. I had an iPod on me. Obviously, you're not allowed to listen to music while you're on duty, so I handed it over to him and told him he could borrow it, and he became a big fan of gangster rap, and he would come by whenever I was working and rap his new favorite song to me. One night, I snuck off base. We walked around the city. I grew up in a small town in San Francisco Bay Area. Campbell's claim to fame is that we invented the fruit cup. That's like nothing particularly special. But I remember telling him that he didn't even know what a fruit cup was. When he was giving me the tour of his city, he was just talking about the rich history, like how Iraq was the cradle of civilization, and he was so immensely proud of it. We went to go get food, and I was eating kebabs, and it was probably the best food I've ever eaten in my life. And I remember eating their bread and just how good the bread was. I said, Brahim, like, how is this bread so good? And he looked at me and he said, we invented bread. I think that was like a rub towards my fruit cup brag. I think that, me just hanging out with him really helped him to open up, and he started telling me about his personal life, his home life. Brahim, at the age of 16, was the provider for his family, and he was doing that by mopping our bathroom floors, cleaning out our latrines. He described his living conditions as deplorable. Only had electricity every other week because of the rolling blackouts, and there was like 6 or 7 of them living in a 1-bedroom house. The next day, I went to the base PX, which is like a mini shop. Bought him some shampoo, some deodorant, soap, and like a thing of water, just because I thought he needed them. And when I presented him the box, the look he gave me, he was just like so shocked by this gesture, and really, like, all the stuff might have cost me $15, $20, and you would have thought that I handed him the keys to a mansion or something like that. I think that really solidified our relationship. He didn't start working as an interpreter until the end of my tour. The U.S. government had an agreement with local nationals that if you did, I think it was 3 or 4 years as an interpreter, we would provide them with a work visa to come back to the United States. So essentially, if you did service for us, we would help you move to America. A lot of people signed up, but it was incredibly dangerous because you had militias and insurgents paying ransom to out anyone working with the U.S. military. This is just speculation, but I think that part of the reason that the government had that deal is because we knew that most of those folks weren't going to make it out alive. So it was a very minimal cost for the United States government to implement something like that. I said goodbye. I wished him farewell, and in my head, I'm thinking, I hope this kid is safe. In my heart, I felt I was leaving him to die. My son was born while I was in Iraq. So when I came home, my son was already 3 months old. I got off the plane from Iraq. I was still in my uniform, still had dirt in my boots, and I went from holding a 25-pound machine gun to a little 7-pound baby, and it was just such a shock. My ex-wife, well, she was my wife at the time, but she's my ex-wife now. She just said I was different, and she was right. I remember walking around and looking at everybody on the street and assessing the threat. Like, is that person armed? Is that person suspicious? Walking down the street, I would look at the rooftops of buildings to see if there were snipers. Cars that looked weird kind of freaked me out because, I don't know, maybe there's suicide bombers. My wife and I, we decided to move to Arizona where we could afford to buy a home. They had a great college out there for veterans, but things didn't get better. My wife ended up leaving me. So I was basically like homeless. I went from living in this beautiful house to crashing on couches of, any friends that I can make. And a lot of the friendships that I did make at the time were based out of survival. I needed somewhere to sleep. So my friend Mike, he offered me a position in Hawaii, and I packed a duffel bag and I was on a plane a couple days later. One night, my phone wouldn't stop ringing, but I was ignoring it. And then I remember waking up to maybe hundreds of text messages, dozens of missed calls, voicemails. And I started checking the messages, and, most of them were like, contact your mom immediately. This is an emergency. So I called my mom, and she was distraught. She was crying. I couldn't understand what she was saying. And she said, your brother Rory was shot last night. He just turned 21, just starting his life. And him and his friend, they were driving to pick up some drinks or whatever you do on a Friday night before you go to a party. And as they were walking out, two men wearing ski masks pointed guns at my brother as he was getting in his car. The guy holding the gun shot my brother 3 times, point blank, from right outside the window. He was dead immediately. I packed up and I moved home. I still had all of my belongings in Arizona. Flying from Maui to Arizona, I think it's like a 6-hour flight or 6.5 hours, crying the whole way. I got off the plane and it was raining. Got on the first taxi, and the taxi driver was just swerving around in a torrential downpour at this point. I wasn't really in the mood, but he started small talk. How are you? Why are you in Arizona? I didn't want to tell him, like, oh, my brother was murdered. So, I said, I'm in the military, and, kind of lied about that and said, just got back from the military and I'm moving out of my apartment. He said, oh, I love the military. Where have you been? And I said, I've been all over the world. Most recently, Iraq. Thinking, like, I wish this dude would shut up. And he said, oh, Iraq, that's where I'm from. Where in Iraq? I was in Kirkuk. And he said, Kirkuk, that's where I'm from. After that, he kind of got quiet. Maybe he recognizes me. Maybe, we arrested one of his family members, or even worse. I'm a little bit nervous, and it still wasn't that bad until he passed the exit that we're supposed to get off on. So now I'm getting really nervous, and I had my backpack in my hand and one hand on the door. And he pulled over on the next exit, and he pulled over on the side of the road. And at this point, I'm ready to run. I could see that he's working up the guts to do something. His grip tightening on the steering wheel and like his knuckles going white. And I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" He didn't really answer. And at this point, I have the door open. He looks at me and he says, "Hey, Dylan, do you remember me?" I just started crying. It was Brahim. He'd grown 5 years. He was an adult now. After I looked into his eyes for a second, I immediately realized what had happened. So we got out of the taxi, and I hugged him as hard as I possibly could. After I left, he became a full-time interpreter, did his 4 years. The officers who were running his visa paperwork asked him, "Where do you want to go in the United States? We can fly you anywhere." And he said, "I just want to go where the weather is like Iraq." And one of the officers said, "Oh, send him to Phoenix, Arizona." That moment saved my life. You know, I needed that more than anything. It was like I had lost one brother and gotten another one back. I guess I just needed a little bit of hope, and seeing Brahim again, that really changed everything.
The voice of Dylan Park, who's now a writer and director living in California. When I try and think about my life, I want to tell myself the story of who I am and to try and curate that a little bit. It's the stories that we repeat and the images that we dwell on that give us a sense of who we are, but that's never going to be the whole truth. I killed my Facebook. What? Yeah, I killed my Facebook. Wow, you must be so brave. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Was it hard? Yeah, it was really hard actually, but some people can do these things, some people can't. I killed my Facebook mainly because I couldn't handle the constant opinions. Ugh, especially my own. And in doing so, I de-tagged myself from every single unflattering photo. I felt as if I got rid of a version of myself in the past 10 years that I didn't consider to be the official version. But then last week, a friend of mine told me that she'd seen me in the background of the photos of a recent wedding that I was at. And someone else knew that I was at a party. And of course I realised that I can untag myself as much as I like. I can close the account, but Facebook's still there. And everyone else is still on it. It's like I'm haunting it very badly. I can't escape. When producer Sophie Townsend was clearing away some papers, she found a drawing by her youngest daughter. It was a drawing from years ago, one of the ones that she'd done at preschool. Like a children's analogue Facebook post. And the drawing hinted at what Sophie describes as a slightly embarrassing version of the way that they used to be.
I'm sticking with you, 'cause I'm made out of glue. Anything that you might do, I'm gonna do too.
I found this picture the other day that you'd drawn, and you'd drawn it when you were about 4 at childcare. And because kids at childcare, they draw pretty badly, even though that's a delightful picture, let me say, the teachers would actually find out what you'd actually drawn and write a little story underneath.
Yeah.
Okay? So why don't you just read what they had written, what you told them that this was a picture of?
Daddy likes to fix things and Mummy likes to cry on the couch.
And then this was for Parents' Day.
Yeah.
So they hung all of them up around the childcare centre. And so everybody who came in saw that Anna had drawn a picture that said, Do you want to read it again?
Daddy likes to fix things and Mummy likes to cry on the couch.
Yeah. So that was kind of humiliating.
Sorry. He didn't actually fix a lot of things. You know what I mean? He fixed lights. He fixed the fire alarm. You fixed the fire alarm.
That's right. I did, didn't
Yeah,
I?
yeah. Knocking it down isn't really fixing it, but same thing.
I fixed the noise coming from
Yeah,
the fire alarm.
yeah.